Have you ever heard the story of the monkey's paw? Because I feel like I used it today for this episode. Hello, manga and anime lovers. I'm Branch, and today I'm talking about episode 5 of Mysterious Disappearances. Now, I praised last week's episode for being the exact slow-paced character-building episode that I really wanted. And I said I wanted another episode just like that. I said I wished all the episodes were like that. Well, I got what I wanted, but not in the way that I really wanted it. So, this episode was a huge mixed bag, and I think, to contrast with last week's episode, this episode is probably my least favorite of the entire season. So first, before I go into the bad, let me mention the really good stuff in this episode, because there was some stuff, especially having to do with the new girl that we're going to be interacting with this new curiosity. The girl whose friend is a beautician, who we saw at the beginning of the episode, which I assume was a flashback to 1 year prior, because her friend disappeared after that. But everything to do with her and the little girl in red was really great, and I'll talk more about that when I get to it, but it was fantastic. Now, the rest of the episode was kind of bad. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. It was doing a lot of what last week's episode did, but without much substance behind it. So they go to school, they go to the bath again, and they go to the teacher's house. That's basically summing up the entire episode, aside from the new mystery that's going on. And while you could sum up a little bit last week's episode in a similar way, you can't sum up what actually happened in that way, because last week's episode was all about building Oto's character and her relationship with Sumireko, whereas this week's episode is kind of about them building a relationship with the teacher, but not enough happens between them and the teacher to warrant it being the entire episode, or the entire half of the episode. Really, the main thing that sticks out like a sore thumb is the school section and the bath section. So the school section, at first it's really cool because you can see Sumineko taking advantage of her stay in the bathroom stall to work on her writing, and I thought that was really cool. And then we also get what I assume is going to be foreshadowing with one of Oto's friends, the little blonde girl, watching what I assume to be a VTuber on her iPad during recess. I'm pretty sure that's going to come up later on. I believe I saw something like that in the opening, so that's something to keep in mind. But then they go to the roof where they have the most lacking conversation with Oto's friends that I've ever seen, to be honest. The first conversation with Oto's friends in episode 2, I believe it was more substantial than this one. We didn't really learn much about the characters, aside from, I believe her name is Mari, and she's basically a vehicle for the camera to have an excuse to make fan service scenes. Occasionally, the jokes were funny, like when they asked Oto what underwear she was wearing, and she just said cloth ones, of course, which was a really funny answer to the question. But aside from that, it doesn't really matter. I honestly cannot buy that this Mari character exists in this show. She's so, I don't even want to say the word superficial. I just don't understand. Nothing about it is very funny, or it doesn't really do anything. She's the most one-dimensional character I've ever seen, and there's a lot of one-dimensional characters in this show, but she's probably the most. And she takes up so much screen time that it's kind of annoying. Like, I thought Mari was out of place in last week's episode. I didn't even mention her because I forgot about her, because all she did was wonder what underwear they were wearing. But this episode, it comes back again, and they're at the bathhouse again, which is a bit of a retread from last time. And while they do meet up with the teacher, and I guess that part's kind of cool, I liked some of the conversation they had, but then most of it is just not even focused on them, it's just focused on Mari being a huge pervert. So that part wasn't great in the episode. Most everything after that is kind of interesting. They go to the teacher's house for a sleepover. Well, not initially. They go to the teacher's house initially for dinner, but they end up staying the night. Now, you might be wondering why I don't like this part as much as I like the sleepover at Sumireko's house in the last episode. And I can tell you right away, it's because we don't learn anything new about the teacher through their interactions. Last week's episode was all about learning more about Oto and her feelings and seeing new sides to her, and even to Sumireko as she stepped into the role of an older sister or an aunt. Here, the teacher doesn't really do anything. Last episode, she apologized to Sumireko and Adashino, and this episode, she's just kind of there, to be honest. She doesn't do much. There's a bit with them paying respects to her grandmother, which is nice, and I liked how Oto interacted with that. how she doesn't really seem to understand the concept, which is understandable if she came from a different world. But aside from that, nothing really happened. The teacher made food, they ate, then they went to sleep. The only new insight we got into the teacher's character was when she lined up the futons on the floor and had them all sleep in a certain way because she wanted to make the kanji for river. I thought that was funny, but aside from that, nothing much else. Now, after that is where all the good stuff comes in, because Ulto wakes up in the middle of the night to knocking at the door. I'm not sure what she was thinking, but she goes closer to the door, and then the knob starts to rattle insanely quickly, like someone's trying to break in. And I have to say, this whole scene was almost actually scary. Like, it was probably the most creepy thing I've seen yet in this show, because it was just way too real to what might happen in real life. If I woke up in the middle of the night to someone knocking at my door, I would probably not go to answer it, because if it's someone I know, they can call me, and if it's something important like the police, they can shout, it's the police. If it's just someone knocking, and especially if they rattle the handle trying to get in, I'm not going anywhere near that. Now, unfortunately, Ulto is just a little girl, so she does, and it turns out there's an invisible person walking around knocking on doors. And this is what Adashino later calls the little girl in red. I assume she only manifests if you open the door in response to her knocking, as we see in the new girl's video that her beautician friend sent her. By the way, that video was so good. It was a cell phone video, and it just brought back all memories of analog horror I've seen online recently on YouTube, and I love that stuff, so that part was great. What wasn't so great is how Ulto ran after this monster in the middle of the night. Like, I know she's a little kid and she's just trying to help her brother, but that was a little bit of a leap to the scaredy cat that we saw in episode 3 or episode 2. And then Sumireko has time to write a note and go out and find her when Ulto is almost immediately assaulted by this new girl who just sees someone and goes straight to slugging them, which was kind of funny, to be honest. I mean, the animation wasn't great, so it was funny for that as well. But it was also funny how she didn't even try to make any contact. She just immediately went to fighting, which, I guess if you're fighting ghosts and monsters, it's really a strike first situation. And it was just unfortunate that Ulto was wearing a red dress. But I thought it was really clever how Sumireko immediately de-escalates the situation by demonstrating that she has a reason to believe this girl's story. That immediately drops all tension, and then she actually talks to them about it instead of going fisticuffs. Oh wait, I forgot a couple things. First, Ulto seems to be a bit of a big eater, which I wonder if that has anything to do with her ability to help plants grow, or maybe things grow in general, in which case she probably needs to replenish energy by eating, because she ate an inhuman amount of food today. Another thing is that she insists that both she and her brother will be going back home, which confirms that they both came from the same place, which was something that was kind of up in the air, even though it was kind of soft confirmed, but now it's actually confirmed. And the final thing I want to mention before I sign off is Adashino's reaction to hearing that Sumireko went to the bath, and how he lamented to the old man at the end of the episode, how he missed the bath scene. I thought, if anything, at least they made that funny joke out of it. You can always count on Adashino to make good humor. Not much else aside from that, except that I'm really looking forward to next week's episode, because this little girl in red story really intrigues me. And I saw a comment that said that it's a Taiwanese story, I believe it was. So I'll be really interested to learn all about that. Hopefully things get a lot better from here. Most of the series has been pretty good, and last week was the best ever, so I assume this is just a dip in the road. Maybe there was some filler in here that wasn't in the manga, I'm not sure. Or maybe it was just bad pacing. But hopefully next week's episode will be a lot better. I'm sure it will be, because Adashino is coming back, and I love that guy. So aside from that, I hope I see you in the next one. Bye!